To touch a little bit on Hunter University. This is our training platform for all things lighting, irrigation, agriculture. These webinars are uploaded onto the webpage and everything else. So definitely visit training.hunterindustries.com. That link is in the resources tab. Right now, I just want to give a little plug to our introduction to irrigation installation fundamentals program. I know there's a lighting webinar, but if you do have a business that does lighting and irrigation, this is one of our newest programs out, and it's gaining a lot of traction with our customers. And we just wanted to tell you a little bit about it so that you could bring new employees that might be doing irrigation on that side of the business up to speed really quickly on irrigation installation. That's it for me. If you do have any questions, like I mentioned along the way, use that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen in the tabs menu. Now, I'm going to pass it over to Ryan Williams. He's going to tell you a little bit about who he is and what he does here at Hunter Industries. Go ahead, Ryan, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. And I'm very excited to be here with everybody here today. We've got, looks like I'm looking at the attendee list here, and there is a great group here, and I'm excited. So a little bit about me. I've spent over a decade at FX Luminaire, building the primary lighting brand called FX Luminaire here at Hunter Industries. So there I've spent my entire time in a variety of engineering, marketing, and product management roles to help build the business and develop products that people really want to use, because that is really where my true passion lies, is creating new products that people use, they appreciate, and they love having part of their livelihood, like many of you, and part of their lives. And that's why I really think this is the greatest industry ever, because you know what, we all need light to see, and that's never going to change. And I know summer solstice just was finished probably a couple weeks ago now, and so the days are still long, but as we get closer to the other half of the year, it's going to get dark pretty early, and where I live, that's somewhere around 4 o'clock, it feels like. And so for all the hard work that either many of you or some of your acquaintances are putting in to build landscape architecture and landscape design, my goal is to make sure that is seen and felt not only during the day, but throughout the evening. So that's a little bit about me, and I guess lastly, I did, if there are any Cougars in the audience, I did spend quite a bit of time at Brigham Young University. So with that said, let me really move on next to borrow a page out of the Apple playbook. Now, many of you probably recognize this logo and this campaign. It was very popular back at the end of the 90s, so about 97 to 2002 is really when Apple focused on this campaign. And if you look closely, on some packaging, you'll actually still see this logo, especially like on the back of the iMac box. But in general, my goal for you for today is really to focus on thinking different. Now, we all have a variety of ways that we do lighting, or go about lighting, or even think about lighting. And my question, and we'll call it my assignment for you today, is really focused around this idea of let's take a step back and think how we can do things differently, because that's really how we are going to get that wow factor in which which is why we are all gathered here today. So with this concept of thinking differently, creating a wow factor, there's an important caveat that we always need to start with, and that important caveat is that we need to first focus on the needs of the homeowner. Now, we all have preconceived notions on what is best, right? What the homeowner needs, what is going to make them feel the most safe, what their property really needs. But in reality, it's what they think matters more than anything else. And so that's the primary caveat number one of the needs of the homeowner. And number two is we need to focus on the needs of the space. Now, everybody, when we walk onto a job site, the autopilot and the auto design in us just kicks on right away. And we're automatically thinking, okay, what am I capable of accomplishing? What is not worth the work? What is absolutely necessary? Maybe even what's going to look amazing. But again, we need to take that step back and say, okay, focus first on the needs of the space, the needs of the homeowner, and then we can go about adding our touch and focusing on those various categories of light. Now today I'm going to focus on here's a I call it a classic picture, and in reality this is just an image I grabbed right off of Google Images, right? But our goal is to kind of just take an ordinary section of a property and find out what we can really do with it, right? To think different, as well as to create that wow factor. So if we step out of our car, right, we're on site either with or without the homeowner, right? You know, we look around the site and we say, okay, you know, what are our different goals? Our goals are to create and improve safety, maybe add beauty by allowing the homeowner to see things that they did not see before. We want to add to their life or their family's life by allowing them to enjoy the property after dark. And so when we talk about this, we automatically think, okay, there's a pathway. I need some path lights. This is the side of the house. You know, we probably don't need as many because it's not the front. There's some great landscaping here. What do we do with that? But really, I want us to take a step back because running through that autopilot concept isn't as effective. What I really want us to start with in terms of is what and how are we lighting? Okay, and in doing that, there are really four main categories that I want to focus on in this area. Okay, and so the first one is this direct lighting concept. Now, we are all familiar with this, whether or not you recognize the name. But the concept is this: when I take a light, and if I want light on the table so I can eat, I want the light to shine on the table. So we call that direct lighting. Very common terms in the interior space and interior lighting design. But we're taking a light and we're shining it directly on what we want to see. We call that direct lighting. Now, the other way to think about it is what's called indirect lighting, down here at the bottom left quadrant here. Indirect lighting is where we light something and allow the reflective light, or indirect light technically, to shine on the surface that we actually want it to be. Now, in this case here, I have a picture of a pathway. Now, on this pathway, there are not downlights. I've got some path lights, I've got some uplights, but nothing directly on the path, which means I'm not direct lighting, I'm getting lighting through indirect lighting. Now, the third category here in the top right quadrant is called direct view. Rather than trying to put light on a surface or a surface nearby what I want it to light, I could also light up the fixture itself. That's the goal of direct lighting, or sorry, direct view. Direct view, I'm not lighting anything else around it. I'm lighting the fixture. Now the fixture, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but it tends to violate every rule in the world of landscape lighting, which is we want to see the effect of the light, not necessarily the source of the light. But direct view can be a very effective method of lighting. And lastly, with our fourth quadrant, it's really intended, I don't have a fancy name for this thing, and it doesn't have the word direct in there anywhere at all, but the concept is just to leave something dark, whether it's a silhouette effect, or even in this case right here with this bench, right? The bench itself is completely dark. There's just light around it. And so really, those are the four ways in which we're lighting. With either direct lighting, indirect lighting, direct view, or just leave it dark. Now, we don't typically use just one of those methods in our designs. The best projects are the projects where we use a multi-layer approach, where I have a combination of some direct lighting. So I can see let me get my pointer over here. You can see some downlights right here. Here's an NL surface mounted downlight. I've got a couple over here. So throughout this area and space, I am putting light directly on the ground, on the tables for task lighting, or highlighting and giving that general overhead lighting effect. Now, I'm also, if you can see very closely here, there's some wall washes here that are lighting up in the framing of the pavilion itself. That is, in a sense, offering some indirect overhead down at the ground. indirect lighting down on the ground. Now, I have a combination. We've got these pendants here, which do have a multi-purpose effect. One of which is and does create that direct view effect. Now, I don't see any of the necessarily the dark options here at all, but this is a great example of making sure that we're including various styles in our lighting designs. Now let's go back to the project that we spoke of. So my first inclination when I jump on this site, right? I let autopilot take over. In a sense, I'm going to say, okay, I got a pathway. It's in the back of the house. I'm going to throw some path lights on the design. Okay, well that's easy to do, and you know what? That would look fantastic. There's path lights traditionally are the second most popular category of lighting fixture within our industry, and so to say we have a path, we're going to use path lights, go for it. You could do that all day long, and they are going to look fantastic. And if I were to do that on this site, I could put quite a few of these, and I can, in a sense, rather than a linear style, I can do I can alternate various sides, and I can choose this path over here, and as well as extend it down into the rest of the space, which goes off towards the side of the house. Now, a couple things. Now, obviously, I did not put one of the path lights in the turf. That's a big no-no in our industry, because that's a great way for that path light to cause all kinds of problems from a maintenance standpoint of the lawn or a maintenance standpoint of the fixture itself. So always keep that path light out of the turf, and focus more on the various mulch and beds that you can work with. So now I have a series of path lights, and this is a great way to do it, like I said here. But let's think a little bit differently here and focus on what we are really doing. So if we want to keep on the path light concept, we could totally do that. Now, the image I showed you before is a classic, what I would call an area light. Now, area light is a common term in the commercial space, but I'm going to kind of steal it and bring it down to our low voltage landscape lighting world, and say our area light is really focused on a 360 degree coverage. Now, when we do that in these various path lights, it does follow a classic or traditional style more than anything else. It allows the homeowner to feel fairly safe because light goes everywhere. These are path lights, right? So they are, in direct line of what I say, small children or upset and angry teenagers. But you do have that issue to worry about with any path light, whether it's an area light or not. Now, another category that we also can work with is a directional path light. That's the one in the middle. Now, from a directional path light standpoint, you can find these in either a modern or classic style. Now, the one you see on the screen here is obviously a modern style, but directional path lights tend to have a purpose. I want light to go in a certain place, but I also don't want light in other places. So we want to avoid light trespass for various reasons, whether it's not our property or whether it's the landscape is just not as ideal. But if we want to hide any of the backlight, prevent that light trespass, directional path lights are a great way to do that with. Now, the third style of path light it goes back to that term I used before, direct view. Direct view violates that primary rule, right, which is you want to see the effect, not the source. And in this sense, we are staring right at the source. But what's fantastic about the style of direct view fixtures is really the fact that the light is so well diffused that it's a very soft and accepting feel that really just makes the lighting not only comfortable but effective. Now, in this case, this direct view is a 360 degree concept, just like that area light that I showed before, but it doesn't have to be. But whether we are combining categories, like combining direct view and area, or just leaving it as a direct view and directional, right? That can be done as well depending on the style of fixtures that you want to work with. So again, path lights are a great solution. And but we also have various styles, right? Area, directional, or direct view, right? Just another way to think different about the concept of, hey, I'm using a path light. Why am I using a path light? And is it the most effective tool for the needs of the space? Now, in addition to path lights to light up that path, we can use other lights as well. It doesn't have to. You don't have to use a path light to light a pathway. Another way to think different is to use downlights instead. Now, just like path lights have their various styles or categories, downlights do as well. Now, the one on the left we're going to start with is a directional downlight. Now, this is technically the fixture is called a JB, but we have various styles and configurations of directional downlights. But they all have a handful of things in common. Number one, they're designed to be pointed downward, and that's important when we manage water and other things that are running around within the environment. Now, with a directional downlight, you can usually put that on a vertical plane, on a horizontal plane, or somewhere in the middle, depending on if it's in a tree or some other some part of the architecture itself. Now, you usually have quite a bit of rotational adjustment, angle adjustments, but you do typically want to keep these things angled no more than 30 degrees off that horizontal plane, because the more you aim it downward, when that happens, you tend to make more of a hot spot down on the ground. So it's always best to install these things the higher up as possible, as well as, remember, keep that angle adjustment no more than 30 degrees off horizontal. But this directional style does tend to be the most popular downlight that I do see. Now, it's also important to note that whether it's this directional style or the other two that we're going to talk about, downlighting creates a very comfortable experience. It allows you to have very soft light transitions, especially if it's installed high enough. And but you do have to focus on minimizing glare, and we're going to talk about that in a few slides here. But that's a very important part in terms of making that a comfortable experience. But it can be the best and most natural form of lighting, and probably from my perspective, homeowners love that more than anything else. Now, the second category right in the middle is a pendant. So pendants are a classic hanging fixture, right? So you will see some movement within the wind, typically, not always, and they can often be somewhat decorative as well. Now, when it comes to what I've seen with pendants happen to be, when they're most commonly installed in trees, are probably the most cost-effective way from a number of fixture standpoint to light up a space. It's extremely natural to do from a look and feel of the lighting. And in doing so, the higher you go, the wider the coverage that you get. Therefore, you don't often have to use as many fixtures. So if you're looking to save a few dollars on the bill of materials, using pendants is a fantastic way to go. Now, the flip side of that is it is a downlight. That means there are ladders involved and extra time involved too to make that an effective installation. So oftentimes the savings of number of fixtures or even number of connections does not necessarily outweigh the labor trade-off that goes with that. So you do, like I said, with the pendant, you have more utilitarian styles like you see here in front of me, as well as more decorative options. Like we do have a perforated sleeve option that will allow you to kind of get a little bit of that twinkling effect for the homeowner and that space. Now the third category is a surface-mounted downlight, often called sconces. Now these surface-mounted ones can often be when they're on can often be a sconce when it's on this vertical plane as you see here, or just a classic downlight when it's on a horizontal surface. But either way, they're fixed and often don't have a lot of adjustability. So it is important to note that this fixture itself is often what I call visible and viewable. Now that those words might sound the same thing to you, but for me, I'm not using them the same. The fixtures are viewable, meaning I can see the light source. That light source is viewable. But the fixtures themselves are visible. You can see them. So we're not talking about just the fixtures, but the light source. So we do want to really focus on having more fixtures and less light, and making sure that that light is very soft and inviting, because those fixtures do tend to be so close to our personal space. Now, so we've talked about path lighting solutions. These are the downlighting categories for downlighting solutions. So if I were to drop downlights into this space, now my space looks a little bit different, doesn't it? So I don't see anything on the ground anymore. I now see just two sconces, the SD that I replaced with the current sconces or coach lights that they already had here. They were pretty ugly, so I wanted to just cover them up. As we often see when we see coach lights on our lighting projects. And in addition to that, I did have to get on a ladder, and I did put about 4 of those directional downlights, really designed to focus on either the pathway itself or the light next to the pathway. Remember, direct lighting versus indirect lighting. So I could easily light up the pathway itself. I could take this directional downlight, this JB, and I can shine it right down here at the bottom of the surface, in various places on that pathway. So that is completely doable, and is an effective way to light up the area. But what it's also going to create is going to create a lot of shadows, and can be sometimes too much contrast for pedestrians in that area. And so more often than not, it's actually more effective to use those directional downlights on the landscape itself, whether it's the turf or the beds as well. Either option is a very effective way to provide indirect lighting on that pathway itself. And when they do that, you do not see the shadows that are created when a pedestrian walks kind of in the way of the beam of the light. And so it becomes, again, more natural and comfortable, and even more safe when we're doing that. And so that's why I put probably 4 of these directional downlights up here to light up various areas around the path, whether it's the bed in the back, the bed here in the front. I got another option here, as well as maybe closer to the house. So that is an example of using the same space, but using downlights instead. Now let's go back to that conversation about glare. Now glare is often defined really as either having too much light or an excessive amount of contrast. So you can have we'll call it several thousand or tens of thousands of lumens that you might be looking at, but because it might be daytime, it doesn't become a lot of contrast, so it's not defined as glare. But the moment I take that 10,000 plus lumen fixture and take that at night, it becomes an excessive amount of contrast. So too much light or excessive contrast is really what defines us as glare. Now, there's various ways to cover that up, right? Whether it's a shorter shroud, this will cover up glare not as much. You can have a longer solution as well, which will give you more glare. For those downlights, you can have a straight and deep shroud to cover up that glare. The one that covers it up the least amount is a flat shroud, where that glass is right here at the top. All options have their own needs and places in which they are most effective. Just depends, again, on the needs of the space, the needs of the homeowner, the fixtures that are being used, and other things to go with that. But lots of tricks of the trade to help make that effective. Now we can also, again, I mentioned earlier, the most popular category of lighting is uplighting, and path lighting is number 2. So from an uplighting standpoint, that can be done in various ways. It could be done from a ground-mounted and above-grounded solution. It could be mounted from an in-ground solution, whether it is a well light, where you can kind of access the light source itself, or an in-grade, where it is completely sealed. A fourth solution that we don't often think about is taking that above-ground solution and sticking that in some type of tube or sleeve and putting that below grade. All 4 options really from a lighting effect create the same effect. The only difference is is what's right for the needs of the space, and maybe what fits the need of the budget here at the same time. Obviously, the closer the light source is to ground level, the less of a scallop you'll see, and the closer that scallop will be to ground level, which often helps makes the lighting feel a little bit more natural, and takes away a floating effect if you've ever seen that before. So we've talked about path lights for our pathway. We've talked about downlights for our pathway, and lastly, uplights for our pathway. So let's see if we can take each of those options and kind of put it together. So here's where we started with. Option number 1 was path lights on the path itself and along the pathway. Option number 2, I'm going to just switch the order a little bit here and just say uplights was another solution. And so here's various uplights that I put to accent either the architecture, the house itself, either some of these smaller shrubs that you see here with my little tiny wall washes, and then some additional uplights for that might be a Japanese maple here or other trees around the landscape. So that might be what an uplight solution looks like. We saw what the downlight solution looks like, which is up here with a couple of sconces as well as directional downlights. Now, in reality, again, we wanted a multi-layer approach, and so my focus is really to blend the various categories to give me the best of not both worlds, but now 3 different worlds, right? So now I have a combination of path lights. I have some uplights scattered around. You see these purple ones here. I've got some directional downlights, allowing me to get a wider reach, and again, that more natural moonlighting effect. And I replaced those sconces as well, because those have got to go. Now, when I bring all the different categories together, they don't have to necessarily be always on at the same time. And it's very common to use path lights in the early evening, but at a certain point I want them off, so I might want to turn on just the higher, not necessarily higher output, but the higher elevation fixtures. Some do the opposite. Some like the more ground coverage in the early evening, but let's say after they go to bed, from a security standpoint, they wanted the path lights on. Sometimes the path lights tend to be more marker lights, so they want them on at all times or not. So there's a variety of different use cases you can use from a blended solution that does not require them all to be on all at the same time. Now
Ryan,
with
real quick,
that, yeah, go ahead, Greg.
As you're talking about the downlighting, we had a few questions come in about that. I figured maybe we could address that before we move on to the next topic. And one of the questions was, are you concerned with line of sight issues when you're downlighting onto a path or something like that from a high elevation? And how would you prevent that light glare?
Yeah, so changes in elevation is always tricky, not only in downlights, but even path lights in general. That's where I often see more problems is in path lights. But from controlling and planning for elevation changes, downlight solutions are most effective when you start combining solutions. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that controlling glare slide, and in doing so, I like this straight and deep shroud. So this one right here for that JB is about 3 inches. I think the DE is 4 inches, and so that's going to give you the most amount of glare control. But you can also add accessories to help add to that. So whenever I use these directional downlights, whether it's an angled shroud or a straight cut shroud, I always will put a hex baffle in there. That just adds another element of control and protection in a sense. Now, if I have an MR16 fixture downlight, we also have some cool little things called recessor rings that will help push that MR16 lamp farther back into the fixture, allowing you to again have more glare control, especially if you don't have a full cutoff shroud. So that's what I would really do. Longer shroud, straight cutoff shroud, and hex baffle, and recessor ring if needed.
Fantastic. All good options. I think that probably got him. Another question came in from Shane, and he said, what advice do you have for landscapers that might be nervous about installing fixtures on the building itself?
I would say do it on your house first, right? That's the first advice for all things lighting is try it on your own house. Now, some easy rules of thumb, right? Is it's always easy if there are gutters because you can sneak the wire right behind the gutter. A simple zip tie will hide it, and you're good to go, and you're already on the second story. So it is important to note that going upstairs is always the best way to take an okay job and make it a wow factor job, right? Because we often forget about upstairs, and so homeowners don't often realize it, but the moment they see what an upstairs looks like when it's well lit, it changes the game completely. So I would start with use those gutters. It makes it a lot easy. Start out with your own house, and in reality, it's not that hard. It just takes more time because you have to play with wires and where they're going. It's very common to just kind of sneak those wires and just drop them in the gutter and send it across. Make sure your connections are really good, and you do have to watch metal. I often see a lot of surge issues when it comes to gutters and wire up on the house, so do watch for that.
So you kind of answered Liz's question too about where do you hide all the wires. So good job.
Yeah,
foreseeing that question coming.
Exactly. So behind the fascia board, use the gutters. I would usually start with that more than anything else. But it is also important to note that you don't want the wires inside the house. So even wires inside a soffit, even though if you still seal the framing and joist in there anyway, it's still technically inside the house from a compliance standpoint. So I would always avoid putting anything inside the house. Because once you do, you have to start planning for various codes. And that means Romex wiring for those in North America and other things to make sure you're checking off the right codes.
I got one more question related to downlighting, and then you can move on. This question came from Galacio at Site One, and he said, is it safe to use downlights on trees when you're having rainy or high moisture environments?
Well, is it safe? I'd say it's always safe in general to use low voltage landscape lighting. So from a safety standpoint, I would say, yeah, go for it. Now there are some tricks that various contractors have found from a downlighting standpoint that really help. Right. So one of which is make sure all your connections are on the ground. Right. So our fixtures come with 25-foot leads. You want to make sure that you can get the connections done close to the ground level, so you're not having to do either connections up in the tree, which would make it not safe necessarily, but also from a maintenance standpoint too. So get the splices all in a single place and as low to the ground as you can. I've also seen it very common to put some element of surge protection down at the base of the tree, so that you can, if something trips, right, you can get it right at the base rather than having to get back up into the tree. So those would be my recommendations on working with downlighting for trees.
Awesome. Thanks for bringing some clarity to that. Continue on.
All right, sounds good. Well, I think we're about closing up on this section here. So we ended with that blended solution of a variety of different categories. Now this is where we start, right? We put our design together. Really, the next step is really to start kind of piecing it together, either for ourselves. Remember, we always practice on our own homes first, and then the ability to give a live demonstration option for the homeowner. So demos are a great way to learn, a great way to get into lighting. This is where you always need to start, is just take a demo kit and go to your house, go to your friends and family's houses, and just play with it to see what it looks like. And that's where you're going to be able to get the quickest onboarding for yourself, is doing those demos. Now, demos are not only effective for your own personal development, but they're also the most effective way to sell projects. So as you are practicing with friends and family, right, it's extremely common for those friends and families to say, okay, I will, if I buy the fixtures, will you put it in, since if you're very new to lighting. Okay, so that's a extremely common way to just get started. So live demonstrations and are the way to go. Now, I'm right here, just about ready to pass it on to Scott now. So really, just a quick recap in terms of what we talked about. Let's think differently here. We do not need to just, if we see a pathway, it doesn't always need to have path lights. You could totally do that, but there are other ways to light that path. Whether it is using various styles of path lights, whether it's using downlights, or whether it's using uplights. Now, remember, in all those different categories, we're lighting through direct lighting, indirect lighting, direct view if you have that option, as well as just leave it dark, which is the current solution that the homeowner has, and they don't want that either. So with that, I'm going to pass it on next to Scott, and really Scott's going to help us understand how we go from this first element of being on site, how we get this design going, which I kind of gave you a sneak preview to already, and how do we, in a sense, get it to that finished rendering in order to help sell the job even more. And so he's going to help walk us through a great tool that Scott is actually the one who created that. So in order to understand what he's going to show off, you do need to make sure that you do have a Hunter ID. So whether you're using the Hunter brand, the FX brand, or products within both, we all have a single sign-on system. And so that account information will really allow you to have access to all the training tools that Greg was talking about, or other resources that can help you be more effective in what you are doing, whether it's the lighting design, whether it's training, or whether it's all the other tools that we have access for you to have. So if you do have want to link to this, we do have a little paper clip in the resources section on your main screen that you're looking at now. But with all of that, I'm going to pass it on over to Scott. So Scott, take it away.
Thanks, Ryan. If everybody's still with me here, I wanted to introduce the next generation of landscape lighting design with night mode. So this takes a in-person, time-consuming, late-night effort of in-person demos and makes it virtual. And let's be honest, time is money and gas is expensive, driving back and forth. So really, when we talk about the wow factor of lighting, which Ryan has so eloquently given us some new ideas, now how about that sales process and helping your client kind of understand your vision? Night mode and my design are really the ticket to show off what you plan for your customer. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to walk through a live demo of this. So this is the view that Ryan was looking at as he shared in his presentation. With this tool, you're able to actually interact with and move things around and just point and click where you would like your fixtures to go. And then with the simple click of the mouse, you can create that nighttime rendering just very quickly and easily, no technical expertise required. So you can kind of see where we're going here with path lighting, up lighting, and it turns out, Ryan, you did have some uplights in this area. They seem to be missing. So I want to take this opportunity to share just how easy it is to select from our catalog and add those fixtures. Now with each category, you can configure your favorite. So I'm always using my NP ZDC in my bronze metallic finish here. And so I've clicked the star to pin it to the top, so to speak. But you can also search by product name or browse through our catalog and using filters to select just the right fixtures for your project. But for the interest of time, I'm just going to go ahead and select my favorite. You can see how quick this is. Once I'm in my adding phase of the tool, you'll see up here that it's confirming I'm adding my NP ZDC BZ, and you just click where you want that to go. So now we've added 2 additional NPs. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And visually, the orange is all kind of lumping together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these two fixtures. I'm going to give it a unique color here just to help organize my project. And you can see I can use color either to identify fixture types, but you can see they all have their own unique icon, or I can use it to identify wire runs. So I can group everything here. One wire running through this pathway could all be blue, and one over here could all be orange. So we provide some organizational tools like color and group number to help you stay organized. Now within each fixture you have what we call the contextual menu, where you can set color, you can delete, you can edit your part number, so you can change that BZ to I don't know, maybe a flat white or an FW here, or you could clone, so just with one click you can add one additional fixture you may have forgotten. You can also set a group number, as I mentioned. So when dealing with Luxor systems, you can already start to configure your groups, or again, just to stay organized, you can use group numbers and colors any way you'd like. And then certainly for night mode, we have our beam options. So once you add a fixture, it's going to give you a default beam. Now this isn't really indicative of what it's going to look like in the field. Please note we have this disclaimer over here that's for illustrative purposes only. We don't want to give your clients the wrong impression. When you click on adjustment, then you're able to, let me go back and very quickly, in case you missed that, I've selected my fixture and I have my beam tools here where I can turn the fixture on or off. I can have full adjustment capability, so I can drag it left to right, up and down. And if I bring this up a little bit further into the canvas here, I can also drag this handle to change its direction. And you're probably seeing it look a little choppy on your end. It's just a refresh rate. It's actually very smooth when you get in here. It's very easy to use. So let's maybe extend that up a little bit more, reduce some of the glare in the window there, drag it over just right. Looks perfect, but it's a little intense. So what I'm going to do is drag the intensity down so I can get just the right view. And that looks pretty good. We'll do the same thing with this one. And intensity again. Actually, I want this intensity to match, so I'm going to select both of them, then beam, then intensity. And finally, I can drag them both together to match that view. Now, one of the important things about this specific view is that we have a great deal of depth. So right up here in this area that I've highlighted is very close to the camera, close to the viewer's perspective. However, back here is quite a bit further away. So the same path light beam here is not going to be the same as what we have back here. So what we actually have the ability to do is use that adjustment tool to create a sense of depth, where the beam up front here is much wider, casting a much brighter or wider shape, and the beam back here is much smaller. So you create a sense of depth that this is covering more area and this is covering less area. Now, you might be looking at this and saying, well, what the heck is going on back there? There's too many icons. Well, we've provided some helpful tools to allow you to focus in on your work. This orange toggle over here on the side allows you to turn off certain light beams. So as you're focusing just on your path lights now, we're only having our path lights on. And you can also adjust your icon size. So you can go from a large to a medium to a small. And you can also zoom in. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here and drag this viewer and move that over to the side. You can even collapse it so it's out of the way. But essentially now I'm able to focus in on my beam here and get just the right look. Maybe make that a bit smaller. Perfect. All right. And so zoom, I'm going to go ahead and reset. And I really liked seeing those different icons with the uplights and path lights. I'm going to pop that back over to large. And finally, to wrap it up, I turn my lights back on for my final presentation. And you know what? This one's just a little out of sorts. I'm just going to angle that one in, put the finishing touches on it, see what it looks like without any icons. Perfect. All right, so I'm ready to take this presentation to my client. Now I have an example over here This country club has 3 different areas. So I'm organizing my project based on, what my customer has told me is important to them, and potentially how we'll do a phased install. So phase 1 is going to be the spa pool. Phase 2, they asked for the clubhouse. And then phase 3, we're going to go around to the back to the bocce ball court. So I can see here quickly and easily, here are all of my products that I've added to my design. I also see suggested list price, and I've been able to input my discount multiplier. So I'm getting ideally the exact parts total that I'll be paying so that I can make an accurate proposal. So I know I'll be paying about $14,000, maybe with labor, let's say maybe a $17,500 will do the trick. And we can also download from here specifications and photometrics. So there's a lot of helpful information. And again, if you remember, we were just adding fixtures. We didn't have to think about all of that information and organizing price and part numbers. It was already right there for us. So while you're thinking about your design, what my design is doing is collecting all of that information to make ordering easier and to make presenting to your homeowner or your client easier. So when you're ready to present, you hit on print here. Print gives you 2 options. You have an installer version and a customer version. And you notice these toggles changed when I selected installer versus customer, but you can select each one individually if you'd like. And when I print out my installer version, I'm going to get my part number, my list price, and adjusted price if I had selected that. And for my customer version, we're going to hide list price, we're going to hide part numbers, and we're going to show that proposal. And here's what that view looks like for the customer, where we're explaining to them what a PS is and a TM, or a path and a downlight, what the finish code is, and how many we're installing. So this is a great resource to promote your brand, promote your product or your services, and close that sale. So my design is available for free online at fxl.com. It's very easy to use, and we've actually determined through some anonymous analytic data that customers and users of this tool are spending about 5 minutes per project designing their lighting systems. So think about that in terms of how long it might take on pen and paper or communicating through other channels. This is really the next evolution of lighting design, and we're really excited to bring that to market and help you be more successful out there.